Hey everyone, excited for another deep dive?
Always.
Great, so today we're going to be looking into the Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay.
And the listener has actually given us a great source to work with. It's called What is Bitcoin Blockchain? A Guide to the Technology Behind BTC.
Sounds good.
So I think this is going to be pretty fascinating, especially when we start to think about how this technology is changing how we view things like money and banking.
Yeah, definitely. So when we think about Bitcoin blockchain, what's really interesting is it's completely intertwined with Bitcoin itself,
Uh-huh.
right? It's really the foundation for this digital currency and actually lots of other digital currencies too.
Okay.
So, you can kind of think about it like a digital record book, but instead of being kept in one place, like with a bank or something, it's spread across a massive network of computers.
So instead of a bank keeping track of our money, this digital record book's doing it. That seems like a pretty big shift.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about how this digital record book actually works.
Yeah, so it all comes down to, blocks and chains, just like the name, right?
Right.
Each block stores information about transactions, and they're linked together in chronological order, forming a chain. This chain is constantly growing as new blocks are added, and every transaction is recorded permanently. Anyone can see it.
So if I sent you some Bitcoin, that transaction would be in one of these blocks. And is that what makes it so secure? Because it's all out there in the open.
That's exactly right. And, each block is linked to the one before it with this unique code called a hash. It basically acts as a fingerprint, making sure the data in each block hasn't been tampered with. So if someone tried to change even the smallest detail in a block, that hash would change and it would alert everyone on the network that something's wrong.
That's pretty clever. But who decides what transactions go into each block? And how do we know this whole thing isn't being controlled by, like, I don't know, some secret organization?
Yeah, so that's where the idea of decentralization comes in, which is a big part of this whole thing. So instead of a central authority like a bank, the Bitcoin blockchain is maintained by a network of computers all over the world. No single entity has control. To add a new block to the chain, the majority of the computers in the network have to agree that the transactions in it are legitimate.
So it's like a giant global consensus with everyone checking each other's work. I'm starting to see why people call this a revolutionary technology.
Yeah.
How does a transaction actually end up on the blockchain, though?
Okay, so let's say you want to buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin.
Okay.
You'd initiate the transaction through your digital wallet.
Uh-huh.
That transaction then gets broadcast across the entire network to all those computers we were talking about. They're called nodes.
Okay.
And then specialized computers called miners step in.
Miners, that sounds intense. What do they do?
They really are the backbone of this whole network. They verify your transaction. They make sure you have enough Bitcoin in your wallet and that everything's, on the up and up.
Huh?
And then they bundle your transaction with a bunch of others and try to add them to the blockchain.
So miners are like the gatekeepers of the blockchain, ensuring that only the valid transactions go through.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not easy. To add their block of transactions to the blockchain, miners have to solve these complex mathematical problems. It's a process that requires a ton of computing power and energy. The first miner to solve the problem gets to add their block to the chain, and they're rewarded with newly minted Bitcoin.
Ah, so that's where all the talk about Bitcoin's energy consumption comes in. But if it makes the system secure, maybe it's worth it. What do you think?
It's definitely a trade-off. The energy consumption is definitely a valid concern, and there's lots of work being done to try to make mining more sustainable, using renewable energy and developing more efficient hardware. But on the other hand, you have this system that's incredibly secure and operates 247 with no central point of failure.
Okay, so let's compare this to our current system, using banks. What are the advantages of using blockchain for transactions?
Well, one of the biggest advantages is speed. Blockchain transactions can be processed much faster than traditional bank transfers, especially for international payments.
Okay.
And there's also the potential for lower fees since you're cutting out the middleman.
Faster transactions and lower fees. Who wouldn't want that? But I'm guessing it's not all sunshine and roses. Are there any downsides to using blockchain technology?
Well, there are definitely challenges. One is availability. As more and more people use the blockchain, the network can get congested, which can lead to slower transaction times and even higher fees. And because blockchain transactions are permanent and irreversible, any errors or fraudulent transactions can be really hard to fix.
Yeah, that's a good point. Immutability is great for security, but not so much if you accidentally send Bitcoin to the wrong address. It seems like there's a lot to consider when weighing the pros and cons of this technology, but I'm definitely intrigued to learn more.
Yeah, for sure.
So, should we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm still kind of thinking about this whole decentralized thing.
Yeah.
It's wild. It really is like the internet of money.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah. I mean, just like the internet completely revolutionized how we share information, Blockchain has the potential to really change how we think about value and trust.
Okay.
It's about like moving from trusting institutions to trusting technology itself.
So remind me again, how does that trust actually work? Like, how can we be sure that the system is really secure and reliable?
Well, it all goes back to those, blocks and hashes and chains.
Right.
Remember we talked about them before. So each block contains a whole bunch of verified transactions, and it's linked to the one before it with that unique cryptographic hash, and that creates this like unbreakable chain. And any attempt to tamper with the data would be immediately obvious to like literally everyone on the network.
Okay, so like if you try to change one domino in a really long line, the whole thing just falls apart.
Exactly.
But let's talk a little bit more about the miners. I mean, I think their role is just fascinating. They're not just verifying transactions, they're actually competing to add these new blocks to the chain, right?
Right. It's like this constant race with miners all over the place trying to solve, these complex mathematical problems. Whoever finds the solution first, they get to add their block of transactions to the blockchain and they get a reward in Bitcoin. And that process called mining, it's what keeps the blockchain secure and it makes sure that no single entity can, control the whole network.
So it's like this massive decentralized puzzle with miners all over the world just trying to solve it.
Yeah, exactly.
The more miners there are, the more secure the network becomes. But, like, what are they actually solving? What do these mathematical problems involve?
Well, they're essentially trying to find this specific hash value that meets certain criteria set by the Bitcoin protocol. And it's a very, computationally intensive process that requires, specialized hardware and a lot of energy.
Okay.
But it's really the key to making the blockchain so resistant to attack.
So the energy consumption that everyone talks about with Bitcoin mining is directly tied to its security. It's like you're using a lot of power, but in return, you're getting this super secure system that's like almost impossible to manipulate or corrupt.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, there are folks working really hard to make mining more sustainable, using things like renewable energy sources and developing more energy efficient hardware. So there's a lot of innovation happening there.
Okay, but let's, take a step back from just Bitcoin for a second. I mean, blockchain technology has applications way beyond just cryptocurrency, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, we're just scratching the surface here. You think about areas like supply chain management.
Okay.
Imagine being able to track a product's journey from the factory all the way to the store shelf with every single step recorded on this immutable blockchain.
Wow.
I know, right? It would create this unprecedented transparency, making it way harder for, counterfeit goods to slip through.
Yeah, that would be a game changer for so many industries.
Huge.
Consumers could have so much more confidence in, the authenticity and ethical sourcing of the products they buy. Are there other areas where you see blockchain having this kind of big impact?
Oh, yeah, tons. Healthcare is a really exciting one.
Okay.
So imagine a system where all your medical records are securely stored on a blockchain and you have complete control over your data.
Okay.
You could grant access to doctors or researchers, only when you need them to have it, which would improve privacy and make data exchange way more efficient.
That sounds really powering. Patients having way more control over their own health information. What about other applications? Are there any ways, blockchain could improve like democratic processes?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Imagine a voting system where every vote is recorded on a public and immutable blockchain.
Oh, wow.
It would make it like practically impossible to manipulate election results and increase trust and transparency in the whole process.
That's amazing, using technology to actually make sure that every vote counts and that elections are really fair and democratic. It seems like the possibilities are just endless for blockchain to really improve so many parts of our lives.
And like I said, we're just starting out. I mean, as more developers and entrepreneurs and, all these people start to really get into this space, we're going to see even more groundbreaking applications in the years to come.
Okay, but let's not get too caught up in the hype.
Right.
It's really important to remember that there are also some potential risks and challenges.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
It's not a perfect solution.
How do we make sure that we're using this technology responsibly and ethically?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right.
It's super important that we have these open and honest conversations about the potential downsides of this tech. We need to think about the risks, like data privacy, security vulnerabilities, the potential for, concentration of power in the wrong hands. All of those things are really important.
So it's not just about the technology itself, but about how we decide to use it and what kind of future we actually want to build with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of responsibility here.
For sure. We need to be thoughtful, right? How we design and implement these blockchain systems, making sure that they're inclusive and equitable and really align with our values as a society.
Okay.
And then we also need to, develop clear regulatory frameworks,
Uh-huh.
ones that protect consumers and prevent misuse, but also, don't stifle innovation.
So it sounds like this is going to require a lot of collaboration,
Yeah.
between technologists and policymakers and, the public. Everyone needs to be involved.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue, and there's no, easy answers.
Right.
But I really believe that if we work together and we have these, important conversations, we can really harness the power of this technology to create a better future.
Okay, well, I got to say, I'm really glad we're having this conversation.
Me too.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me. I've learned a lot about the technical workings of blockchain, all these potential applications, and like we've been saying, all these important ethical things we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we're still so early in all of this.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so much more to learn and explore and create.
it's exciting, but it's also a little bit daunting, right? We're all kind of pioneers in this new digital frontier.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, the future of blockchain is still being written, and we all have a part in figuring out what that looks like.
I love that.
So to our listener out there, we encourage you to keep learning and keep asking questions and keep having these important conversations. I mean, this world is vast and constantly evolving, and there's always something new to discover.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to come up with the next big blockchain application that changes everything for the better.
I love that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Bitcoin blockchain. We hope you found it, informative and thought-provoking and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring. Okay, so we're back for the final part of this deep dive into the Bitcoin blockchain. We've covered so much ground. I mean, we talked about all those technical bits and pieces, the potential benefits, and some of the challenges and all that. Now I'm thinking about the big picture. Where do we go from here? How do you see blockchain shaping our world in the long run?
Well, it's tough to say for sure, but I really do think this has the potential to be as big as the internet was.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. The internet totally changed how we connect with each other, with information. The blockchain could be the same thing, but for value and trust.
Okay, so we're not just talking about changing money here. We're talking about how we interact with each other and with institutions. Everything could be different.
Exactly. Imagine a world where we can just, transact directly with each other. No need for banks or governments to be in the middle. And we can verify anything, information, goods, whatever, with total transparency. And then imagine building brand new systems for, governance and collaboration that are actually more democratic and accountable.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get it. But we've got to be realistic, right? There are some risks here. How do we make sure we're using this technology in a way that's responsible, that's ethical?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. It's so important that we have these conversations, open and honest about the potential downsides.
Uh-huh.
We've got to be aware of the risks, things like data privacy, security issues, the possibility of, too much power getting concentrated in the wrong hands. We can't just ignore that stuff.
So it's not even just about the tech, it's about how we use it, right? It's about the choices we make, what kind of future we want to build.
Right. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah?
We need to be smart about how we design and implement these systems, making sure they're inclusive, fair, and that they reflect our values. And then we've got to have good rule in place.
Okay.
Clear regulatory frameworks that protect people but also don't, crush innovation.
So it sounds like everyone needs to be at the table here, right? Technologists, policymakers, the public, everybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's messy. There's no simple solution.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that if we work together, have those tough conversations, we can really use this technology to make the world better.
I love that. I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Me too.
It's been really eye-opening. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about the nuts and bolts of blockchain, but also about its potential and, like we've been saying, all the ethical stuff we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway is just how early it is for all this.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to learn, so much more to explore, to create. It's amazing.
It's a little overwhelming too, right? I mean, we're all kind of figuring this out as we go. We're like pioneers in this crazy new digital world.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so cool.
Absolutely. The future of blockchain, it's still being written, and we all get to be part of that.
That's a great way to put it.
So to our listener out there, just keep learning, keep asking questions, keep having these conversations. The world of blockchain is huge, and it's changing all the time, so there's always something new to discover.
Exactly. And you never know, you might be the one who comes up with the next amazing blockchain application that changes everything.
I love that. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Bitcoin blockchain. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even, a little bit inspiring. Keep exploring, everyone.